We went out to Long Beach to shoot, and you know, when you're in LA, if you don't really understand LA, it could be deceptive, because like in New York, if you're in a rough area, you see rough guys on the street, so you kind of know, okay, this is kind of edgy, you got to be on guard. But in LA, you know, people are not on the streets like that. So I had scouted all these locations, and the first location was this record store, which you'll see that picture later, and everything looked great until we got on the set. Snoop's first video, the buzz was building, and all the people in the neighborhood came out.
It's the first time I saw LA gang members, and I was like, Fred!
Yeah, it was pretty heavy. So I'm shooting a performance, and Snoop's on the roof, and you know, and then midway through the shoot, guys on the crew were coming over to me going like, Fab, yo, the crew can't work, guys are on the set, they won't move. And at the time we had, one of the things you were doing in a rap video, you would hire the Fruit of Islam from the Nation of Islam's security, which were very respected. Every hood, every black community, these guys were revered, but not in LA at that time. And so these guys were looking in the face of the Fruit of Islam going like, F you, man, we ain't moving. And I remember I'm sitting under the tent looking at the monitors. I had Dr. Dre next to me. I said, yo, Dre, you think you can talk to them? Dre looked at me and said, huh? So at that point, I knew this could be a problem. When we finished that setup, we broke for lunch. When we got to the next location, which was a park about a half a mile down the road, it was 5 or 6 fights broke out. You know, the police helicopters were circulating. You know, and this was not more than 6 months after the LA riot, so the people were still on edge. So that ended up spreading. This took me a whole summer to finish this shoot. So this was one of the interior locations, which
there was like gunshots going off. So remember we were like running to the car, and I was shooting, crazy. And Fred's like, stop shooting, we're gonna get us killed, let's go. We were like mad.
It was a wild, crazy scene, and this was this is like in the beginning of the video. Snoop sitting, and he's has a little.
Right, because the video moved inside after that.
Yeah. And this is Snoop's line, which I threw to him: "You don't love me, you just love my doggy style." Which, anyway, so that was the shot of Snoop in the bed, you know, telling the girl, "You just love my doggy style."
He was really shy and really shy and cute. Yeah. So this is on top of the rooftop of that record store VIP, which was when things were started. So what was happening is that if you see the VIP shot of Snoop, there was a crane. Fab had a crane that was shooting it, but below the record, on the below the crane, the scene there was happening. Nobody was shooting. That was just what was going on.
Yeah, she wasn't even in the video.
So I'm shooting up top, and I looked down. I was like, what's happening over here? I also love that picture because it's so like 90s hip hop with Carl Kanai and the head wrap, the claw. It was just. Yeah, I didn't take any pictures of the gang members because I was shocked when I first saw them, I have to say. Because you would hear about them in New York, you'd be like, yeah, whatever. And you're like, ooh. Next. That's Wyclef and Lauren on the rooftop in East Harlem during the vocab video. That was fun. And then that was, you could tell.
It's John Forte.
John Forte, oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you have, of course, you see the record company guy with the giant phone. Such a time in New York. Oh, what? Go ahead.
I'll buy the book.
Oh, you're trying to take pictures? You're trying to bootleg now? This was also in that, there was a random chicken, just, it was Spanish Harlem, and there's like chickens around Spanish Harlem a lot.
That's normal.
That's normal. That's normal, right? Your mother used to say, remember, I think you had like a trauma about like having to go get the live chickens.
Live chickens. That's a whole nother story. But one of the things, I mean, at looking at these photographs again, there's and it's funny as you say, when you return back 20 years, and for me, it takes me back that time too. But also looking at the clothing indicates so much of the time. There was something so humble about everybody and the way they dressed, which wasn't even, before that, it was a little loud.
Humble? There's nothing humble about hip hop style.
They had their own style, but
They had their own style.
it wasn't loud like, per se, like the B-boys beforehand, who were like,
Are you talking about the 90s?
the 90s, yeah, where it had just broke away from a specific type of style hip hop had in terms of dress, which was a lot more elegant, fresh press. Everything was, you would dip from head to toe, brand new. Most people, you know, I mean, we were all poor, but there was something in that effect coming off the kind of fashion consciousness of the 70s. It's weird because at this time, that's when we started making our own brands. This is part of the early branding of hip-hop culture and clothing. And you see Carl Kanai and Cross Colors and all those people come into play.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Versace, it wasn't Armani, it wasn't none of those labels. And there's something quite nice about that,
Yeah,
you know.
totally. Definitely. I know, and you don't really see that in New York anymore as much like that. Paris, that was on a shot from our Paris Adventures. Tretch and Das Effects with EPMD. Latifah, that was in her neighborhood. We shot. I don't even know what video that was.
In Jersey?
Yeah, I was in Jersey, in her neighborhood in Jersey. A jacket. So it's so I wouldn't say that's like toned down. But
Yeah, I totally disagree with you.
it was just moved into another style.
Yeah.
That's what you
It
mean.
did, it did.
It was the crack epidemic affected hip hop deeply.
That's true.
And what had happened is that cats couldn't really afford, you know, to always go to
The
Dapper
April
Dan
jacket.
and all that stuff. So, you know, and that's where you had the lowlifes that used to go mopping, shoplifting. That's what it's called. And they would steal. So what they would steal were, you know, Ralph Lauren and Polo. That's why they were called lowlifes. And you know, and it changed, but still, they wanted the aesthetic to still have the appearance that they had some money. Because even the Wyclef, if you had a Sherwin, that means you had a little money in your pocket.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was really really cool. But I think what you're talking about is the backpackers, and that's when the boroughs and Long Island and the Bridge and Tunnel really started to come into the fold. And if you go to the club, Brooklyn, and you got to cross the bridge, you go to the club, you brought a backpack because when you sweated out your clothes, you had another pair of clothing to get on because it was cold as hell to take the train back. And that's where the backpack came, because we would spend the whole day in the city, and that became a style as well. And then the hoodies, and no one called them hoodies. It caught on because it was the hoodlum look, you know, and it was just, you didn't want to be seen, and that became a fashion statement as well. And Walkaway, right? April Walker brought that.
April had one of the first brands that became an official brand. Yes, right.
That's right. But what's interesting is,
I still have some of that. I won't throw it out.
well, you guys may not know this about us, but I was actually when we went to high school, my primary interest was photography, but she was a photographer. So I
So he
switched.
blames his whole life on me.
No,
I ruined his life.
no, actually, this is how fortuitous it is, because, right, I went to, she studied photography, and I went to study fashion design, and so the fashion design was preparing me for my interest in fashion, and really, because hip-hop is really a do-it-yourself culture, right? And so, as a person who was draping and making patterns, I didn't know that was going to lead, how that was going to turn out later in life as a sculptor.
Right.
It made sense, but this is where she really saves my life.
Okay, so is that...
No.
Oh, we didn't get there.
Wait, just very quickly, because in terms of where departing from this era, this time we were growing up, we were like, okay, what do we do now with our lives? She wanted to study film and photography at RISD, and I wasn't sure, and I thought I was at Parsons, I dropped out, and I started making sculpture. Then I said, I want to be a chef. Remember that day on 6th Avenue? And I was going to go to register at the French Culinary Institute. We passed Apex Technical School, welding school, and she said, "You've got to go in. You've got to go in." And that day changed my life.
And then he was weld, and then he learned to weld with all the inmates.
So we have this very,
That's who was there, that's who was there.
Wow.
That's true, yeah.
So it all just kind of makes sense.
I know. Now we visit him at Apex Technical School.
And I got my toolbox.
Yeah, I saw that. The other one.
Oh.
Okay, good. So this was on the remix, Brandy's remix with MC Light and Yo-Yo and Latifah. This is another thing, you know, it's funny, somebody asked me at a talk about how women's clothes, like, you know, how were women back then, and this picture came up and I was like, well, it's interesting because it's a lot different than like as today, you know, everything was like oversized, it wasn't about just showing off and it, you know, it was a different time as far as having to, how you presented yourself.
Yeah.
Brand new
Oh,
bands.
brand new beans.
Everyone had a crush. This is again in Rocksteady Reunion, Rocksteady Park. From
To the
Grandmaster
Cold Crush
Cage.
brothers.
Yeah.
Grandmaster Caz and Easy AD from Cold Crush.
They're first generation rappers from South Bronx.
Yeah.
And they've been around for a long time. And interesting enough, I did just say about one of them, he has a health initiative in the South Bronx where he's been serving the community and healing through guidance, and also with, of course, the kind of the bridge is hip hop culture.
Joe Conzo has a lot of great old school pictures of them in his book, Born in the Bronx. Questlove and Tretch. Shot Tretch a lot. There was a lot of Tretch shooting back then.
That's interesting too, because that was another change in hip hop where, you know, artists wanted to have live music instead of just the DJ spinning the records and then rapping over the records. And Questlove, the Roots, they were very much part of the beginnings of that.
Yeah, they were like, I remember when they first came out, I was like, oh. Chuck Stone, Charles Stone directed that. But yeah, there was a lot of love. Nick? So as Rosie was talking about backstage, this is backstage as Method Man rolling a blunt and Snoop sleeping. So yeah, this was one of those, there was like just people everywhere, madness, craziness, and it was just too. This was the same concert actually from the Biggie picture too.
So what was it like for you in going backstage and, you know, dominated by male, African American males? I mean, what was your, what was your past?
I don't know. It was just, it just felt normal to me, you know, because I would always just, like I said before, like kind of going in just to feel the environment, to be part of the environment. Again, there were no cell phones, so no cell phone pictures. No, I was usually like, it was either just me or like another photographer, and we always knew each other because there was only a handful of us. And then they started to get to know us too, because I was around a lot and knew a lot of people. So it was just kind of hanging out and just waiting to feel moments and what to capture. And you know, for me, I also think about how many pictures I didn't take, especially in the early years, like when we were in high school, and you know, all the clothes and the fashion, and just because, you know, you didn't know. It's like, you know, I was still a teenager, but I was still taking pictures, but you didn't, you know, you just don't know when you're in it, or even to know like, oh, this is going to be really amazing in 20 years to look at this. You know, as a kid, you're always like, this is going to be like this forever. OPP video, Naughty by Nature. Fable. This was,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, this was, Fable and Fable, we went to high school. He went to high school with all of us, and Fable and I were very close. He taught me how to dance. We used to go out till like 4 in the morning dancing. So this was after the photo shoot we did with Wiggles. He came back to the house to chill, and there was, we were just sitting at the window, and the light was so beautiful. So I just said, stay there, and we just took some pictures. That was in Paris, actually, on the set of, on the location of where we shot the MC Solar and Guru video. I just love that, the textures and stuff. Guru, same location. Oh, Cool G Rap. This was during the Illmatic session, and basically Premier and Lloyd Professor and Nas just, taking a break and talking. And this is during the session with Q-Tip, Q-Tip and same thing, Premier. It's funny because the woman that put the book together, Michelle Dunmarsh, when she decided to use that picture on the left as the cover, she didn't know anything about hip hop. And so I said, just put the images together, what you think. And at first she was like putting like Biggie and Snoop together, and I was like, oh, that doesn't work. But for the most part, like she just did it on photos. And then I said, let me know what you think the cover should be. Because I was so interested in her coming from just a pure photography background, not a hip hop background, what she felt. So when she showed me the cover that you saw in the first, and it was such a bizarre coincidence because it was also, we put the book out the 20th anniversary of Nomadic. I said, why did you pick that cover? She didn't even know who Nas was. She said, I don't know, there just seemed like there was something going on that was really special. And she said, and the guy in the back, Premier, the way that he's looking at him, like I feel like something was birthing that was really special. And I thought, wow, okay. And she was right. So that's why I said, okay, I'll leave it as the cover, because I thought that was interesting that she picked that out from the photograph. And as some of you know, Illmatic is,
Yeah, it should be made clear that Illmatic is considered one of the greatest hip-hop albums ever recorded. About 20 years ago in '94, and Nas, when he emerged, he was probably just barely 18, 19 years old when that album was made. I think probably what they were laying down that night, because Q-Tip produced the song One Love, and I directed that video for Nas from this album. But if you really knew music and hip-hop, when you heard it, you just knew, like, wait a minute, something's going on here. And there was a great documentary, Time is Illmatic, that came out about a year ago that kind of captured Nas's life up to the point when this record is made, and it's a game-changing record.
Yeah, amazing.
Kind of like Miles Davis when he did Kinda Blue, one of those pivotal moments in the genre.
That's them.
It's interesting here, the guy on the far right in the dark jacket, Large Professor, was interesting. Large Pro, and the cat that gave Nas his first shot on a record on his album a couple years prior, a song called Live at the Barbecue, and Nas spit this 116-bar verse that everybody was just like,
I went to jail for snuffing Jesus?
yeah, kidnapped the president's wife for her playing the music like the coup. Yeah, it was just one of those moments.
Bobito and Stretch played it first on the airwaves.
Yes, who have a great doc
Another
about
great
that
documentary.
whole thing coming out. Yeah, Stretch and Bobito had
Put that in
an
the doc.
underground college radio.
guess so.
Yeah, the doc is incredible. It's like all these guys, this was the first shot, was being on Stretch and Bobito's radio show. And so in the doc, it's Jay-Z, it's Nas, it's Wu-Tang Clan. All these guys' first moment was on Stretch and Bobito's radio show.
Yeah.
And after the record came out, I would interview them on Yo MTV Raps, which was happening at the time. So.
That's Doze, who we went to high school with also, who was original member of Rocksteady, but also an amazing painter and still today, amazing artist. Fab, in my apartment, when he smoked cigarettes. And Roy Ayers. Yo-Yo and LL. That was on Yo and one of your shoots, the
Okay.
LL.
Oh, LL, that was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I think
in the
Central Park.
park. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to just kind of come up with like, oh, you're filming? Oh, I'm not doing anything. I'll just
Right.
come up but it was like that, right? It was much more fluid,
Yeah,
you know.
totally.
And it was like for him to just like, yeah, all right, I'll be at the park. There was no like big security, big anything. It was.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not as contrived as it is now. Where young artists, the digital revolution has enabled them to both shoot their own videos and be their own photographers. But also something else happened where I think and much different now than then, where some of the artists, you have permissions that are required. This thing you just plant, record labels. I mean, there's so much legalese stuff that happens before the moment,
Yeah, it was another time. Again, Debbie, this was a shoot that we did actually for Vibe magazine, and we just went out. It was like 3 of us, me, Debbie, and 2 of our friends, and went to Coney Island in the winter, and then this was the train in Coney Island. Then we snuck into the Transit Museum, because they had the old trains there. We wanted to do like a Walker Evans kind of photo montage, so. And it was like $2,500 to rent it. So I was like, again, the Leica comes in handy. I was like, let's just go. We'll go to the back car, went. We stole the shots and we were done. Good. And again, Fable and Wiggles. I think that's the last one. I think we're going to see. Go ahead. Oh, that's the last one. Oh, okay. And that's it. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Oh.
Sorry.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Jola.
Hi.
I have a really interesting question. I'm not gonna go over you. I'm sorry. I have a really interesting question because you guys actually witnessed the upbringing of hip hop, the culture, and all of that good stuff. Do you feel that we still do have hip hop today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just in a different form, kind of, right?
Yeah, I think hip hop is very much alive, and I think it's better than it's ever been. I mean, I think what people confuse with today's hip hop is what they hear as rap music on the radio, which is just one component of 5. Hip hop is really 5 elements, as stated by Afrika Bambaataa, the godfather of hip hop. There's the b-boying, which is the break dancing. There's the graffiti aerosol art. There's the rapping. There's the DJing. And the 5th most important one that he proclaimed, which actually I think transformed my life and many lives, is knowledge of self. And so when he proclaimed that kind of provoked a lot of us to look back at the arc of history, both Puerto Rican history, African history, and all the histories that tie into all those disciplines. And that said, that is something that goes on all around the world and in the US. So it is very much alive and growing into so many new spaces. And it's very important to note that it is finding its way into academia right now in a big way.
Yeah, I think definitely he's right. Hip hop is alive. You have to just know where to find it, what websites. If you even just search underground hip hop, you'd be amazed what comes up on Google and the artists that totally live and exist within the digital domain. It's pretty interesting. You just have to dig, and it's there, thriving.
I concur. I don't think, when people say, oh, that's not hip hop is dead, it bothers me because it is not. It is not. And what's funny to me is that the real hip hop that exists today is pretty much subversive, and it's funny because that's how we started out. Mm-hmm. And so it's still there, it's still alive. It's just that you have to work to find it. And we're so lazy these days, we just turn on the radio and say, oh, that's hip hop. So, but there's stuff on the radio that's really good, like Kendrick Lamar is just pretty awesome, mm-hmm. And there's like wonderful artists too. And the biggest thing in hip hop, what people may disagree with me, but hip hop was always subversive. It was always bringing out the subculture and the culture that was ignored, right? So right now, hip hop is hitting really big with the gay community, real big, and there's this underground swell of them, and one of the hip hop artists, I can't think of his name, was actually on David Letterman, and I saw it and I went, oh my gosh, you know, and I was like, it was pretty amazing, and so it's still alive and popping, but you know, there's a lot of garbage out there too.
I just want to add, there was a documentary that I saw recently. In fact, I did a talk in Harlem with the filmmaker. The documentary is called Shake the Dust, and it's about breakdancing or b-boying now going on in about 5 or 6 countries around the world, particularly like Yemen, Uganda. A bunch of these countries were really war-torn, and these were young kids, and the reason they call it Shake the Dust is because like in the early days of hip-hop, guys would have a big piece of cardboard or linoleum to dance on. These kids are doing it in the dirt. And so you got little puffs of dust coming up. But in the context of this doc, these kids so much reminded me totally of hip hop in the very beginning, in the rubble-strewn South Bronx, if you will, because they literally have nothing, and you clearly see when these kids get nice with their moves, their self-esteem has raised dramatically, and they feel like I'm somebody. And that's what this doc resonated with, and it was amazing 30 plus years later to see how this culture thrives for the youth all around the world, and it gives them something that, so it's not about a hit song on the radio or platinum or all that corny stuff that we got inundated with here. It's that substantive thing that was at the very beginnings of all of this. I'm somebody, I'm here, check me out. That's still going on.
Yeah, I agree. But also what I really love is when, like I just saw this woman perform who's from Indian background, Alawala, and I could not take my eyes off her. And what I loved about her is that she was, you know, had that spirit of hip hop. Her rhyming and her rapping was incredible, but what she did is she brought her culture in it as well. So she had, you know, there would be a little bit of Indian music in there and beats and her dancing, but then it was like seamlessly interweaving into that. So when I've experienced that too, that's very exciting to me, where you can feel other cultures mixing in and then bringing another flavor out. I love that.
I was going to say, for a lot of my contemporaries who grew up inside the Bronx and Bronx River and used to go to the skate key and Broadway National and things like that, many of us don't look at it as being hip-hop. We look at it as more like hip-hop. And that there's a transitional away from the messages and themes. There's always going to be a remnant, as Rosie pointed out, with opinion. You know, but besides that, in general, the commercialization of what it is has moved far away from any lyrical messages that are really substantive, and instead has incorporated a lot more derogatory and debasing messages and themes that did not exist in music when we were first doing it, and I grew up in sound music. You know, black slaves.
Yeah, but
Spoonie G was derogatory.
I know, but I mean, that's
Spoonie G was way back when, and then Hotel, Motel, Holiday Inn, that was derogatory. So I beg to differ just slightly. I mean, nowadays you're right, it's off the charts and it's disgusting. But misogyny has always existed.
I'm referring to the racial elements and everything that's incorporated inside. You're saying the messages that, like, there's always going to be a level of sexism just because that's the nature of the globe itself. But there are a lot more messages that tear people down than lift people up.
Yeah, but that's if you just tune in, that's if you just want to get your music from Hot 97, if you will, in New York City, or whatever that mainstream radio, you're not going to get it there. Which people come up to me all the time knowing my background. Yo, Fab, how you feel about hip hop? Expecting me to just jump on the bandwagon and bash it. And I go, B, you got to know where to look. And it's all of that conscious uplifting that you want. One of the most conscious rappers that I follow closely is a brother by the name of Jasiri X. Make a note, Google him, it'll pop right up. Mad clips on YouTube. A brother by the name of Paradise, who was one of the X Clan, now lives in Pittsburgh. He shoots all these videos. And back in the last election cycle when the Tea Party was out there with all that nonsense, yo, Jasiri would be at Tea Party rallies with those people behind him spitting crazy lyrics, very substantive, and then Paradise filming it, cutting it up, and the videos they would be out and about